Hi everybody, Robert Ogilvy, Executive Strategist and EQ Coach. Glad to see you guys. Okay, so today's topic, 4 warning signs that you're perhaps winning the battle but ultimately losing the war for professional motivation. So one topic you've probably heard me mention before is flow states. These are incredibly important for not just motivation, but kind of in terms of chironic happiness, kind of reminding us what we could be or kind of shaking up some of our expectations. But there's a lot of other short-term and long-term factors that come together to allow this to happen. So flow is one piece of this, but I'm trying to kind of show in a typical kind of modern day work sense how a lot of people are feeling in the pitfalls they get into, because it's a lot of getting locked in certain biases, bad habits around short-term thinking, and failing to understand the long-term opportunities which could really help us flourish and help us be at our best, right? So that overemphasis on these short-term things is really what sabotages us in the long term, right? Okay. First one, the one warning sign: productivity is everything. Well, when people say that, what they end up meaning is like, small scale task productivity, right? And really what it means is that there's not a lot of big ways they can add a lot of insight, not a lot of strategic value. They're very limited in terms of other choice or the basic kind of business mission and business direction of what they're doing. But as long as they can be a workhorse in some sense, whether that's a kind of solo entrepreneurial sense or the opposite, some huge enterprise corporation you work at, that somehow that will fix things. Newsflash, it won't. It won't. And in that frame of things, there is no real win. It's just, how much suffering is there, right? How much am I kind of sufficient or varying degrees of, not measuring up? And that just feels very painful, but it should feel that way to everyone. It's incredibly competitive and subversive. There is no such thing as flourishing in an environment where it's just like, either you're doing this productive thing, which is expected of you anyway, or you're varying degrees of, unliked or unworthy. That's a really bad sign. But also that people, as we take that on ourselves, what it becomes like is, there are no changes we could make. We don't see any other options. In the push for speed and velocity, more productivity, we become ever more myopically blinded because we need to keep relying on ever more efficient practice patterns, which keep pointing us in, I don't want to say the wrong direction, but these few kind of shortcuts we're used to taking, and there's all these other parts of what could make us make our work great and make us a lot happier that we are ever more conditioning ourselves to just not even notice, right? We're just ignorant to them. That is a really bad sign. That's a really bad sign. So part of the way productivity works, if you look at the factors of EQ that come together for this, the EQ competencies, first we have intrinsic motivation. So that's your grit and your goal setting. That's your willpower, right? And so when you're just directly productive, directly kind of task productive, that's really what's coming out here, right? You can spend some willpower points, do this better. But these are small G goals, right? And it's a manifestation of your will only in that you individually kind of want to do well or challenge yourself or kind of personally prove something. But you got to spend your willpower and spirit to do this thing, right? Next source of motivation, optimism. And formally that's around the good opportunities you see ahead of you. That you are able to conceive, but it kind of gives you damage resilience in the moment. But tactically, I want to break this down apart because this starts to deal with the next 2 warning signs we're going to get into. To be professionally motivated, you're trying to map out what kind of people you need around you to feel good, and this is again professional and personal. And where do you feel good, which is kind of like what topics or what kind of activities help you feel good. So mapping that out is critically important. Optimism becomes important in that because it allows you to find and map out these places and feel that when you're operating within these places, the good outcomes are actually possible. Let me straight up say there are lots of very individually effective professionals with no optimism, and what it feels like is like, listen, I'm bright and experienced, I have my shit together, but the world is going to hell in a handbasket because they're so unhopeful, they're so unoptimistic of good results that could even be possible, that they've already kind of fatalistically resigned things before they've happened, right? Things will just result, go back to some horrible default mode, and that's a reflection of their own not just depression, but myopic thinking, right? So these two middle warning signs are, yeah, what people are going to help you thrive personally and professionally, what context, topics, activities are going to help you thrive. That's actually, I would say, the hardest part. And from a career counseling standpoint, this is something actually we do very, very bad. If you'll actually look at the literature and the results around career counseling, what it tends to do is be good at directing people to a short-term educational thing, somewhat on the, somewhat to very technical specialized end, and get them a job in the short term. But it is inversely correlated with long-term satisfaction and meaning. Meaning, if in any kind of career context, however formal or informal, someone is trying to do some quick problem solving for you, but they don't actually know what you're interested in, right? And that's true if you're 18 or 19 and trying to figure out what to study, but that's also true if you're 28 or 38 and going through a big career change, right? Our classical way of approaching this is really bad, right? But yet that is the primary material that helps us figure out like what we're interested in and what long-term we should be focused on, right? Let me just vibe on this a bit more. When you're around people that you can share something in common with, it's easier to build trust and have empathy for them, but it's also easier for you to kind of learn with them. And that actually brings us to the other half, which is the mastery side of this, right? Which is that in the right context, you can actually learn better. So part of this issue of like, it's a correlated issue of like what topics and activities you're interested in, and then the people side of that is, okay, so what people does that mean you become connected to, right? If you want to be a good karate fighter, you're going to be interested in talking to the karate fighters, you're going to be interested in training and practicing with the karate fighters. If you want to be a crack, anthropology researcher, you're going to be interested in these kinds of topics, and that's going to bring you with other anthropologists, and that's going to be part of this clique that for lots of levels you vibe with, right? This is actually really important in you finding a place that you can learn, excel at, and feel supported by, right? And vice versa, that you can support, which again starts to actually fulfill our love and belonging needs. This is also these middle layers of this are a great example that of the cyclical nature of learning and motivation. Okay, so you've heard me mention probably OODA loops at some point. So that's observe, orient, decide, act, or observing, orienting, deciding, and acting. We could say the same thing when we talk about, so another organization, Lectica, would use the term virtuous cycle of learning, VCOOL, and for them they would use the terms set, seek, apply, and reflect, but again it's cyclical. They actually kind of, the way they're describing set and seek, it's almost like they're just flipping around the observe and orient, which again shows you that observe and orient or set and seek are kind of correlated. Are you collecting individual data points? Are you framing up the lens and sense making about what's relevant and worth doing? And then you go into the actual kind of applying and evaluating and seeing what worked and what didn't work and improving next time, right? This is even true in the EQ end of things. In the 6 seconds end of things, we would use the term engage, activate, reflect, right? So you're engaging, you're trying to get juiced up and interested in the thing, you're trying to get your head on straight, you're activating, you're acting, you're doing something, you're in some kind of live context and you're listening into what's happening, and then the last stage of it is reflecting. You're just reflecting on what you're feeling, what's coming up for you, and you're continuing to do that, right? And that's helping you from small scale emotional fluency to high scale noble purpose get a kind of a lively emotional sense of what's going on. Okay, the last one. So to recap the ones up to now, it's like productivity is a big time bomb. It's a big misdirection because it's small scale tasks. Who makes you feel good? What context? What sorts of activities make you feel good? And not knowing that, not knowing either of those are the next one. And then the last one is not having any sense of meaning. This is subtle, but it's is there anything that could be infinite and yet worth doing, or is there anything that could be endless and worth doing? These are actually the kind of contemplations that Noble Purpose is dealing with, because it is a wind, it is a source of motivation, because this is tapping into your values, but at such a big, impactful, like mission cause-oriented scale, that it truly is having an impact on the world, and that's becoming a source of motivation for you, because you being part of that big service, big impact path is something that really means something to you, right? This isn't just a small g task you get to check off your list, right? It's big and long term, maybe endless and kind of unsolvable, but actually still worthwhile, right? It could be a wicked problem. Not knowing what's meaningful is a critical issue. Simon Sinek is talking a lot about this now when he talks about infinite games, right? You need to figure out what infinite game you're playing, or else you're not going to have enough wind in your sails to keep doing this. I know this video was a little bit more convoluted, but just to try to boil it down again, small scale productivity is a trap. You need to be looking at the right people that help you thrive, the right activities and contexts, and building up some big meaning. That's it for now. I love you guys. See you next time.